We're welcoming back Kim Congleton, our Chief Operating Officer, to talk to us about Power BI in detail. Kim, I'm excited for you to share some of the things that we discussed about Power BI with our listeners. And I thought I would start with asking you to share a story that you told me about that is often a typical starting point for people with Power BI.
Yeah, I think Microsoft has done a great marketing job of, the power of Power BI, no pun intended, or maybe it was, but, so a lot of organizations have just went all in and they've created tons of reports. They've let multiple people kind of create reports. And before you know it, you end up with like 300 reports and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. And then you'll kind of get to the point where you have different numbers on different reports, depending on who built them and what data set they're pointing to or what data they're pointing to. So you kind of get where it's like, oh, wait, maybe we didn't do this the right way. Maybe we should go back and, think this through. So we typically get called when that happens. So it's like, okay, wait a minute, like, how can we clean this up? How should we have started? And that's where we can come in and kind of help guide people on, okay, let's take a look at all of this. Let's take a look at all the data sets. You're recreating your data set every time. Let's build one data set that you can use for all of your reports.
Yep. It sounds like just like any other reporting package, you can design it badly if you don't have a plan, right? It can become overly complex, duplicative, and inefficient, right? Where reports take a long time because they're designed badly. So having a plan for that is huge. Okay.
And I think one of the things we see too is we see people like start to not trust the numbers, and you actually, like, people are all on board with Power BI. They want to use Power BI. Then all of a sudden they get reports with different numbers, and now your user adoption starts falling off. They're like, oh, well, I don't trust those numbers. I don't trust Power BI. It's no good. I don't want to use it anymore.
Right.
So you can also have that problem.
Yeah, and that's terrible because you've invested all this stuff in a really great tool. But because people don't trust the numbers, they throw out the idea and maybe even go back to whatever the old thing was that they were using. Yep. Well, tell me a little bit about the story about this customer that we worked with recently and how that project was successful and why.
Okay. Well, it was kind of the scenario I described already. So they had a lot of reports. They had a lot of different data that different places they were pulling the data from. And we went in and worked with them. They had an excellent resource on staff that had really, I can't stress enough how much she had taught herself and had learned just about Power BI from going out and doing, some of the stuff that's online. But she was great to work with. So, once we kind of helped her understand, like, how we could build a data structure. So we looked at all of the reports that they had. We looked at all of the data structures with her and then worked with her to kind of figure out what was that one data structure we could build that would allow them to create all the reports they needed. And through that process, we were able to cut down the number of different reports quite a bit and really get one data structure where now she can build a report really quickly off that data set. And they are really very happy, but we worked with her through that. We kind of workshopped it. So it was, a couple of workshops to get the data set built. And then we built a couple of the first reports with her. And now it's kind of like, we meet every once in a while when she's got questions, but she has really just taken off and ran with it. So it's been really great to see them have all this kind of, stuff all over the place now, to have a very structured kind of way that they build reports. And then everybody's sure that they're getting the same numbers, the same calculations, all of that. So it's been really great to watch.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a nice success story. And certainly having people who are invested in that tool already was great. But I love the workshop approach. I don't see too many other places doing that. They either, do it for you and deliver it or, something else. So.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, it's one of our things that we like to do. We like to educate people and teach them to fish for themselves. So it was just, it's such a great experience when there's somebody on the other end that is just so willing to learn and so willing to do that type of work to really dig in and learn the new way to do things.
Yep. I know that one of the bigger challenges with a Power BI project is dealing with the data structure. And there's a lot behind that. What are the big reasons why that's a big challenge in these kind of projects?
Yeah, I think, like I said, Microsoft has done a great job of marketing how powerful Power BI is, but Power BI ultimately is a front-end tool. So it's going to make the data that's behind it look pretty. It's going to allow you to interact with the data behind it and make that look pretty. But the one thing that people typically don't know or don't understand is that you still have to have a data structure behind that. And if you're just hitting certain tables every time you create a report, I'm going to hit this table and I'm going to create another report and hit this table, not understanding that data structure or how they tie together can lead to different numbers, because there are numbers in certain tables that will change based on when things happen. Mm-hmm. So, being sure that you understand that and really making sure, especially when you're reporting financial numbers, that you're hitting the correct tables and doing the correct calculations is super critical. And there are also things you can do that can make it very inefficient to run that report. So really taking the time to build one data set for maybe sales, one data set for purchasing, just depends. You might have one data set that has sales and purchasing in it. Just depends on what your needs are or what pieces of the system you're using. But building that one data set and all those reports being created, different reports being created off that, makes it very efficient. And then you're sure that everybody's going to have the same numbers as well, which mm-hmm. is super important when you're in any reporting project.
Yep. Yeah. We always say one version of the truth, right?
Yes. Yes. The accountants especially like the one version of the truth.
Yes, we do.
The IT people are like, just tell me what to build. But, no, not really. Just kidding. So.
Yep. So one of the other factors that I see with a lot of these projects is that people will embark on this on their own, and they might do a pretty good job with the data structure. But what they end up with is something that's dashboard light that just contains a whole lot of data dumps, and it's very difficult for them to read them and to understand what they are. And I always say that report design has to be part of this to avoid that kind of situation. So how do you tackle that with a project for good report design?
Right, and exactly. If you end up with a bunch of reports that look like spreadsheets or like just a bunch of rows of data, it's really no different than the Excel reports maybe you had before.
Yep.
So understanding the correct visuals to use to relay the information that you want to relay is kind of really one of the first areas where you want to start, right? Am I using a grid? Can I use a pie chart? Sometimes that, there's certain things that don't translate well to a pie chart, and then there's other things that it makes it actually easier for a person to see what's going on. So, oh, wait, 80% of my sales was to this one customer. I didn't know that. Or, this customer is 80% of the time late paying me. So one of the first things is to really kind of look at the data that you're trying to present to somebody and then try and figure out what's the best visual to use for that. There's also ways of building slicers so that, it's not just a data dump and I'm just filtering on a row. Making sure I understand like the accounting periods, right? So am I on a yearly accounting period or am I on a 445, or I threw that in just for you, and building a slicer so that I can change the data by maybe accounting period so I can look at it that way. So there's a lot of questions you want to ask up front and really kind of work with the end user to figure out what are the visuals that'll be the most impactful and will convey the story of the data that you want to tell.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you say that that's the story of the data. When I look at some of these dashboards that are built really well, where they're highly summarized and they're concise and they deal with some single concepts per pane, it really does make the evaluation of that data almost conversational, where it leads you to the next question. And by changing one of the slicers or a different time period, you can change, what happens with that conversation. And I think people understand their reports much better.
Or it's like a bar graph, right? A bar chart. And I've got one bar that's way out of whack. And it's like, oh, wait, let me drill into that. So it's always having those visuals up front and the ability to drill through and then see the data. And then you can kind of say, oh, wait, and I think this happened on one of our reports we did.
Yeah.
I forgot to check which account it was pointing to. And you said, hey, what is that? Why is that line so big? It shouldn't be that big.
Yeah.
And I drilled through and we could tell I was pointing to a different report or a different account. I need to change the account.
Yeah.
So it just makes it easier to see. I'm a very visual person. So I want to see the bar chart or the pictures, and then I'll figure out what's going on after that.
Yeah, but we didn't have to spend a whole lot of time vetting all that. It was very easy to see what was working and what was not working, right?
Exactly.
Very good. Well, we're going to move on to talk about some other parts of the Power Platform, but any last things to share with folks about Power BI and what you'd like them to know today?
I think, it's so much more than a reporting tool. And I don't think that people realize that. Like we're going to talk about Power Apps later, but there is the ability now to actually embed Power Apps inside of a Power BI report and interact at the same time that you're analyzing the data. So just keep in mind that it's not just a reporting tool. I can't stress that enough. There is a ton of stuff in it that you can do with it now.
Yeah, none of it works in isolation. There's always more possibility by making those connections, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, this was super fun talking about Power BI. I can't wait for our next conversations. We'll see you in our next episode that's going to talk about Power Automate. I'm Carrie Peters. Thank you for tuning in to the Get Your New View podcast. For more episodes like this on YouTube, click the subscribe button and ring the bell to ensure that you get notified whenever new content comes out. If you're listening to the audio podcast, please share an honest review on Apple Podcasts. If you are ready to rethink today for tomorrow, look for the link below and contact us to speak with our expert team. You won't find the level of no-nonsense real-world experience we offer anywhere else, and we're here to put that experience to work for you.